Boxing is probably the sport with the most amount of movies made about it, but somehow no studio seems to get the actual boxing part down. Obviously it's cinema, so it's meant to be a dramatized version of real life or fictional events. However, some movies stand above the rest with how well they manage to capture the sweet science. So today we're going to be looking at different boxing projects and rank how well the actual boxing segments look. Big disclaimer, I have watched all of these movies in their entirety, and this is not a ranking on how much I actually like them, but instead a criticism of how the sport actually plays a part. And obviously I'm not a world champion, so you don't have to take what I say seriously. This is just my opinion at the end of the day. Now here's how my grading system is going to work. I'm going to base it off of the four main factors, being how it sounds, how it looks, matchmaking, and skill level. However, these will not be applied if not necessary. For example, if the movie is based on a true story. With that being said, let's get into it. And let me know if you'd want a part 2 or an MMA version. Starting this list off, we have the only show on the entire list, which is Netflix's Hounds, a K-drama based on two boxers who go from opponents to friends. In the show, they fight off loan sharks who take advantage of people who are desperate during the COVID times. The opening episode sees us meet the two main characters named Kim Yeon-woo and Hung Woo-jin as they compete in a boxing tournament against each other, where Kim comes out on top. Now, as much as I like the show and as entertaining as the actual fighting is, the boxing parts are executed so badly that it honestly just looks like a comedy. The first thing you notice is how bad everyone's footwork and movement is. Everyone sort of just awkwardly moves around, and even if it's meant to be juniors and not a world championship fight, none of the combinations make sense. A lot of the punches are thrown from the hip without any movement at all. And while the show is entertaining, it doesn't really do a good job of showing off how boxing looks or happens. A lot of the movements are weird and a lot of people just stand still sometimes. I give it an F on the grading scale. Next up, we have The Fighter, released in 2010, starring Mark the Inventor and The Dark Knight. This movie is based on the true story of boxers and brothers Mickey and Dickie Ward. Now, while this is honestly top 3 movies on the list, and one I recommend everyone watch, the actual boxing itself looks weak. The problem is that the boxing prioritizes real contact over real looking action, and in my opinion, it just doesn't work. The boxing, while clean, looks way too soft, and honestly, it's hard to believe that any of it would actually hurt. And like I said, it is a really good movie, but it's honestly hard to believe any of the action going on. The constant slow tapping on each other takes away from the stakes sometimes and leaves the training parts more exciting than the actual boxing. However, there is a huge saving factor, and that's the final fight, where Mickey takes on Shea Neary. This is honestly one of the better fights on the list, and honestly feels like you're watching a world championship fight happen live in front of you. Because of the final fight, my grade goes from a D- up to a C. The third movie on the list is surprisingly the lowest rated, Southpaw, released in 2015. They truly never do give Jake a happy role. The story follows a widowed boxer who battles custody of his daughter following a tragic loss. Now, there actually isn't any major complaints I have about the action in the movie. The guard is well done, the movement doesn't look too choppy or flat, the combinations flow, and the punches sound legit. I honestly like a lot of the boxing scenes in the movie, and there's not much I can say without really repeating myself. But everything flows well. The punches sound crisp, the footwork's good, and some alternate angles flow really well with the realistic approach. I honestly think it's near perfect on my grading scale, and I give it an A+. One thing I will say though is I'm actually surprised with how poorly the movie was received, and I recommend you put it on your watch list. The final 2 movies I'm gonna look at today go hand in hand but have different problems. Creed 1 and Rocky 1. Starting with Rocky, we have a movie that's highly regarded as a masterpiece, but I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really like. But nonetheless, the movie was released in 1976, starring the now famous Sylvester Stallone in his debut. And there's only really one fight to look at, which follows all of the fundamentals really well. The footwork isn't too choppy, the punches look and sound well, the combos flow well. However, there is one pretty common problem that you will notice. In a lot of the Rocky movies, there seems to be a very common issue where they just do not know how to not foul. A lot of the Rocky movies are just filled with fouls, non-stop, that always go unpunished. Now thankfully they fixed this part for the Creed movies, but it's still an issue here nonetheless. I get it's a film for entertainment, but for me personally, I've never been a big fan of it, and it's a small detail, but I notice it big time. A small but big detail I noticed was Apollo slowly losing his will throughout the fight, which would be realistic if this exact scenario were to happen in real life, so bonus points for that. But obviously the premise of giving an unknown a chance probably wouldn't happen in real life, but I understand that there is no movie without that. The fouls do drag it down a good amount, and the matchmaking being taken into account, I give the boxing a B+, as it's honestly very entertaining, it just has its realism faults. The final movie I'm looking at today is Creed 1. A movie that we honestly need to start praising more. Released in 2015, the story follows the illegitimate child of Rocky's opponent, Apollo. Adonis, played by Michael B. Jordan, is an up-and-coming boxer who takes a legit route instead of writing on his family's name. This is a whole different conversation, but honestly we need to start looking at this as one of the best sports movies ever made. Now growing up with this movie, I set this as a standard for any boxing movie to follow. The flow, the combinations, the guard, the footwork, the sound, everything is done to near perfection, and the boxing feels like it's happening right in front of you. This is largely thanks to the approach they took making the movie, where they focus more on realism than any other aspect. I think Creed 1 so far is the best iteration of boxing on the big screen, and I give it an A+. So how would you grade these movies? Did you agree with mine? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you'd want to see a part 2, let me know. And please feel free to check out my other videos on boxing and movies alike. And if you do decide to check me out, please let me know if you prefer this quicker, more short form style of video, or the more longer in detail one. Bye bye.